Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day. And today I would like to talk to you about The Undone Life of Jak Dreadth by Shawn Speman. This is a prequel novella to his full-length novel, The Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey. But you don't need to have read Antiquity Grey to read Jak Dreadth. It is its own standalone novella. The Dreadth family does appear in Antiquity Grey, but this is a few generations prior. So none of the characters in this are really going to impact the story of Antiquity Grey. It's its own standalone novella. If you're not familiar with Antiquity Grey, I did do a full book review of that last year or a few years ago on my channel, so by all means check that out. But like I said, it's not required for this particular novella. If you're not familiar with the world, it is... I don't know if post-apocalyptic is quite the word for it, because I don't know that was necessarily an apocalypse, but this is a distant future where the Earth has changed. Obviously we're taking place here in kind of Europe, but Earth as it is a vastly changed Earth. It is sand dunes everywhere. The resources that are left are fairly limited. Society is fractured, and even though some technology has advanced significantly, including space travel being a possibility, those living on Earth don't really have, a upward mobile society or a futuristic society. They're kind of a nice little combination of some like almost primitive fantasy worlds with some of that technology. As I mentioned, space travel has occurred. There were once humans who have left who are now coming back as celestials to harvest whatever resources they see fit from Earth. And so that brings us to the very start of this novella, in which war has erupted between those on Earth and the Celestials trying to come back and take things over for themselves. And even though we don't necessarily start in this battle, the titular Jak Dreadth finds himself on the losing end of the battle. Mechs are a very big thing in this world. Think of giant Gundam warriors. And Jak Dreadth is one such mech pilot, but he finds himself on the wrong end of a good old backstabbing. And he very quickly finds himself and his mech stranded in the desert, the mech being unusable and him having to fight to survive. So this is a very short novella. It's 100 pages, but only 3 chapters. One of those chapters being chapter 3, about half the length of the novella itself. I'm not going to say that all 3 chapters involve Dreadth trying to fight for survival. He actually, he does find himself stranded in the desert, and facing the elements and having to adapt to, basically get by. He soon finds himself, being rescued by one of the Arabi, who is, I guess an offshoot of Islamic faith, although their religion, which is very heavily featured in the novel, follows more like almost like Christianity in a way, or I should say Hebrewism perhaps. But yeah, he soon makes some very unlikely friends in his quest for survival, which leads him on another quest that arises. But I'm going to keep that quest, the chapter 2 and chapter 3 quest, out of the video here, because that would be spoiler territory. So as I mentioned, there is kind of some theologic discussion in that, and I would say that that is actually kind of jam-packed in this novella. There was some theology within Antiquity Grey, particularly talking about the beliefs of the Arabi, but it's almost like front and center in the Undone Life of Jak Dreadth, which is fine. I'm not a particularly religious person myself, but I don't mind reading some of that. But there is one biblical story that I am familiar with, I'm familiar with various biblical stories, but the story of Moses has many parallels to Jak Dreadth here. It almost feels in a way like Shawn Speman said, you know what, I want to make a sci-fi Moses. Now, that's not to say that this is very much exactly the story of Moses, but there are some very, very strong parallels. which was very surprising for me, because as I mentioned, Antiquity Grey did have some religion in it, but it was very much first and foremost a sci-fi story, a sci-fi novel. This feels very much like a faith novella set in a sci-fi world. So if you are going to be turned off by the idea of having to read some faith-based readings, you're probably not going to like Jak Dreadth. If you're familiar with the story of Moses, you're probably going to find some very familiar aspects and roadblocks within Dreadth's story here. I will say, I mean, the characters are decent. I mean, for the 100 pages that you have, I mean, he does try to cram as much as he can into it. It does leave room for a sequel. This does have all the Kickstarter backers in the back here, but it does mention, how the story ends here. Novella 2, the dragon soul of Jak Dreadth will continue his dream of keeping safe from the Imperium. I don't know if the novella is going to actually happen, but we'll see. Same thing happened with Antiquity Grey. That also ended with kind of a cliffhanger, and stay tuned for book 2. Several years have passed, and Shawn Speakman has kind of moved on to other projects. I don't know if he's going to come back to this, which is a shame. I mean, the character, but there's a lot that he tries to cram into these three chapters, which is probably one of the weakest aspects of the novella, is that there's so much he tries to put in there that you only get small tastings of everything. This is a world with giant mechs, but you don't really get giant mechs. You get just a little taste of giant mechs. This is a world that has dragons, but you only get a little taste of dragons. The only thing that you don't really get a little taste of, that's in all 3 chapters, is, like I said, the very faith-based theological writings. Which is why, if you had to choose between Jak Dreadth and Antiquity Grey, I would honestly recommend Antiquity Grey over Jak Dreadth. If you loved Antiquity Grey and you want more in that world, then you should definitely check out Jak Dreadth. But unfortunately, of the 2, Antiquity Grey soars head and shoulders above Jak Dreadth, just because you actually get more world building and you get a much bigger taste of mechs and dragons within that novel than you do within this short novella. Like I said, it's not a bad novella by any means. It's just, it unfortunately is living in the shadow of its full-length novel companion, and it's tough to get out of that shadow. But yeah, I mean, it's still an all-right read. Copies are still available directly through, not directly through Grimmo Press. I believe they're all available through the signed page, which is also run by Shawn Speakman. But you can get copies personalized. This right here is personalized to me. Enter the Dragon, Shawn Speakman, his little elvish signature there. So, I mean, if this sounds like a book for you, absolutely check it out. If you are a big faith reader, then you might like this, and you want to see, a sci-fi spin on the tale of Moses, then this might be the story for you. It doesn't have any interior artwork, but I do have to say I love the cover artwork by Alan Morris. He's just a fantastic artist. This is the trade edition, which is available through the signed page. There is a limited edition as well, also available through the signed page, but I believe you have to purchase that in tandem with Antiquity Grey. I'm actually going to do a video, perhaps later this week, perhaps next week, showcasing the different editions of this novel as well as Antiquity Grey, just because there are quite a few, and I actually have quite a few as well, so I figured that'd be pretty fun to watch. To check out. So if you want to check that out, please consider subscribing to the channel. I do at least one book review a week. I'm going to try to do some more comparison videos, kind of showing off different editions. Not necessarily reviews and comparisons like I did with the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, but I think they'll be interesting nonetheless. Plus, I have plenty of unboxing videos in between here and there to hold you over in the meantime. So thank you very much for watching. Check out the writings of Shawn Speakman. He's a very busy guy. Like I said, if you have to pick one of the 2, I would recommend going with Antiquity Grey over the 2, over Jak Dreadth. But it's not a bad read by any means. It's, it's too short to be bad, but also too short to really give you more than just the samplings and tastes, if that makes sense. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.